There's other information that we have that we are analyzing to know what is facts. But as you know, I like to deal with the figures because they do speak to me. They give me understanding about what Father is saying to us beyond the written word and beyond what people are saying.
Right.
When I see the news, I kind of see beyond what they're saying, and the numbers to me, they speak and they tell me something. And I don't always bother you with everything that I'm seeing and I'm hearing, but I wanted to do a checkup. I wanted to see where we are so that you know and understand with all the recent events that we are dealing with something here.
I believe that.
Let's see. Let's see if we can reach.
Put it on that. You put it on the thing, the assessment book.
Okay, something you may notice right away, day of departure. Okay, all right, there we go. Good deal. All right, day of departure. This is a figure that most everyone is familiar with. This is one of the pyramids of Egypt. Egypt is famous for its artifacts and pyramids and a host of other things. Something that we need to know about Egypt. Egypt is, or Mizraim as well, is one of the sons of Noah. One of the sons of Noah. So there's something very special about Egypt because it's tying in the first world before the flood and the world after the flood, because Egypt is very much a part of the history of the world and the future, because Egypt, there will be an altar that will be, and this is the only other place that I have read, that there will be an altar where the sacrifices will be taken from the people. The borders of Africa. So the prophecy from the River Nile to Euphrates River will be the land that is given to Israel. All right, now, if you notice on the side here we have revolution. There's a revolution that's taking place in Egypt as we speak. This has been hitting the news of late, very heavy. The Egyptians in crisis. To begin, let's analyze. To begin, we'll analyze what is now taking place in Egypt with a connection to world events as it connects to scriptural woes, the birth pains of the coming age. Okay, looking at, again, the current events, we will take a look at some of the headlines from the different sources to put things in perspective. Now, what I mean here is I've done some research of different resources, looking at newspaper, a lot of reporting on television and online and different places. So what I've done is I put together a collection of information to see just what's being said so that we can kind of get an idea of what is actually taking place in the world. Now, scripturally, I can tell you right up front that this is going to match up with the 4 horsemen. I want you to keep that in mind. I didn't put it on a slide, but I've talked about it before, that we are now in the presence, basically, of the 4 horsemen. The 4 horsemen are dealing with famine, war, pestilence, and disease. These things we will see in one form or another dealing with the nations of the earth. All right, so any person who's able to read and can see this well enough, if you would read the first bullet for us.
I was able to. I got all her fingerprints on my lens, so that's the way.
Thank you.
Demonstrations began in Egypt, January 25th, 2011, titled Revolution, to call for the resignation of President Hosni Mubarak.
Thank you. All right, so this started actually on the 25th of January. My report is as of the 4th of January and, the 4th of February. So that's about 10 days that they're on their 11th or 12th now. And there's some very particular things that have taken place during this length of time. They have gone from what was called first peaceful assembly and the call for the resignation of President Mubarak. Then just a couple of days back, they had opposition come in and begin to clear a path for those who wanted to protest against the protesters. So at that point, things really start to get out of hand, because when they came in clearing a path, riding on horses and camels, and I saw a little later as well cars where they were really clearing path, and they didn't care about life, because I saw people doing the video just mowed down like they didn't care, it didn't matter. As well, when the police were involved, they just shot. I saw a teenager as he was, waving, and he just kind of went down. So things kind of really starting to turn for the worse now. Second bullet.
The rally follows reports that U.S. and Egyptian officials are discussing a plan in which Mubarak will step down immediately.
Next.
Opposition supporters rallied in Tahrir Square after prayers in Cairo on February 4th, 2011. A huge day of departure. The rally called for an immediate end to Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak's 30-year rule.
Next.
I am fed up. After 62 years in public service, I have had enough. I want to go, Mubarak said in a 20-minute interview with ABC News.
Now, could day of departure be a remembrance from Yahweh, even to the Greek translation of the Exodus? Let's take a look and analyze this. Day of departure, it speaks of leaving, right? From the Greek translation, they have, they called it Exodus, leaving from Egypt. So here we have Egypt once again hitting major news and crisis that's going on in there. We have the U.S., who's somewhat involved in trying to negotiate from what we hear, and that's basically from one side. You probably have many nations who are speaking to the different sides and then, advising them, but we're always going to hear from one side, which is the side we're in. So, they want to look like the good guys, but are they really?
Right.
February 4th is when I got this report, and it states that Mubarak has about 30 years of rule, and the people are protesting his style of rule, saying that he was tyrannic and basically just there, you know, fixing the ballots and everything else. So that doesn't really gel with democracy, because democracy pushes of the people, for the people, by the people. And this is a rally cry from, well, we definitely can know, we can see that that's something the U.S. push all around the world, democracy. That seems to be like the religious signature of the United States. We are to push all the nations into a democratic society. 30 years is something that really stuck out when I saw 30 years, and by the 4th day of February, 8 people were said in this particular part to be dead, had died, but there was 900 who was injured. So 9 is a teacher, 8 is renewed beginnings. So right away, I'm having some things that are standing out here, and with this 30 is redemption. But see, you have two sides. You have those who will be redeemed and those who will not. Those who will receive the other side. And he has spent 62 years, and this is a direct quote from him. He said, 62 years, I'm fed up. I'm ready to move on. So basically what we've seen is a back and forth where he says, I'm not giving it up, I'm going to give it up. And the people are saying, get out, get out, get out. So he told ABC News, I'm leaving, I'm getting out. Day of departure. That by itself, when I saw that, now remind you that these are news articles and headlines that I'm pulling, and the title was Day of Departure. So right there by itself, it connected for me to the Exodus. Idea of some, and all questions, I'll get to them because it's not long, so let me go all the way through and I'll get to the questions. There's some other ideas that I wanted to look into, which I wanted to understand what was Israel's perspective on this. Because if we look at it from our standpoint, from what we have been taught, of the people, for the people, by the people, now that hasn't always worked for us.
No.
Basically, it's a cover-up to make us feel that it's because of you we do this.
Very important. Yeah.
When we vote, our votes really don't go toward electing a president. It goes towards your representative, whoever that might be.
Hoping they do.
And your representative is supposed to represent your vote, basically. Because the Electoral College is 500 and something, I don't remember the totals, but being my degree is in political science, these are things that I had to learn back in college. So I know that the Electoral College was established because they didn't trust the people to be wise enough to select people who were capable of running this country. So what they have done is set up a system to make us believe that we have voting power to choose elected officials and they represent us. So if you have only 500 and something people who represent, what, we have 200, and my last census that I remember is 280 million population of the United States. And I think it's, of course, it's more than that now. They just took another one. I think we're closer to 300 and over. But anyway, I'll just stay with the last figure I have. You have 500 people, let's say even 600, let's give them a few, representing that many people. All they have to do is get some money to those 600, and they can swing the votes. That's another argument, so I'm not going to get into that right now. But anyway, I wanted to look at Israel. How do they feel about this? What is their position? Because it's a good idea to have a democratic society that truly the elected officials represent the desires of the people. You know, health care and education and critical judging rules and all of those things. They're viable. We need this. But, as I said before, that I think there's a lot of undercurrent that we have not understood on the surface. So I wanted to look at Israel. What is their position on this? Well, can I have someone read the first bullet for us? Start with the title. Cairo tremors will be felt here. Speaking of Israel, go ahead to the first bullet.
The collapse of the old regiment in Cairo, if it takes place, will have a tremendous influence, mostly negative, on Israel's situation.
All right, so from the start, Israel saying that this is going to be negative for us. If the regime that is in place now collapses, there's going to be, in a long run, some very bad situations that come out from this. Second bullet, anyone?
Israeli suspicions about the functioning of the American administration in the Middle East, which began with U.S. President Barack Obama's speech at a Cairo University 18 months ago, have now turned to astonishment at the stammering coming out of Washington over the last few days.
All right. Israel is connecting the U.S. to this, but they're using very soft words here if you look at this. This is not how they really feel. This is what they're saying. But I believe that there's a more deeply felt, heartfelt concern. And why? Look at what is being said. And you would have to take that a little deeper. There's a suspicion here that the administration in the Middle East, from President Barack Obama, as his visit was in Cairo 18 months ago, and now look where we're at. What is going on? We have to realize the relative location. Israel is on, there's only one country in between, and I'll get all questions in a few minutes. There's only one country in between Egypt and Israel, and that's Arabia. And one of the things that Israel is grateful for is the stability that they've had for over 20 years, which is under Mubarak. So now you're moving him, and who's going to take his place? Because we have all of our enemies all around us, and only one country that has any kind of allied responsibility to us. Not really a responsibility, but they have kind of been the only one that kind of stabilized their position with being in that region. and now you're going to move them. Last bullet, anyone? Mubarak. Hamas. All right, in Gaza. So now you have Hamas, you got Gaza, you have the Arab nations already, they're chipping away. The United States is also trying to have what they call the road to peace. They're trying to cut right through their country. Let me tell you how that would be. It would be like saying we're here in North Carolina and they want to cut through, go from Virginia to South Carolina, right down through the middle of North Carolina. They want to take that and make that an enemy state. So you got access on all sides to get to, you know, your strength. You're splitting up your people and putting an enemy right down the middle.
Right down the middle. And Israel's supposed to say, oh yeah.
And this is a problem that Israel is seeing that's coming. And this is why they said it will have a long-term effect. And what's happening is they're ousting the father. And the son was, you know, he was getting ready to go in and take over because the father's now in his 80s. And the son is getting ready to take over. And now the people are like, we don't want either one of them. We want a democratic society. And you even see somebody out there with a sign in English saying freedom. I kind of think that that might have been a plant. I don't know, because they don't speak English. Their signs are usually in Arabic, in their language. Okay, this one is going to be a little tough to see, so I'll read this one. Haaretz, or this is my source for this one. And each of them I usually try to have my source up here for, because I have different resources I use, internet, different news agencies. All right, so looking at Israel, it condemns the status of international peacekeeping forces in Sinai, leading to a refusal by Egypt to allow movement of Israeli military submarines and ships in the Suez Canal, employed by the last 2 years as a deterrent against Iran and to combat weapons smuggling and from the Sudan and Gaza. So right here, what I listed as some of the reasons that Israel say this is not for us, this is against us. Because from Egypt, they were able to get an allied help who would stop and foil different attempts. One attempt was where they would tunnel from Egypt down under and try to come up over on the other side in Israel. That was foiled in Egypt. Now you're taking that away. They also gave us access to their waters. And this is a tactic that the United States always use against their enemies. When they need to get over to Japan, what they have to do is and I'm not saying enemy as Japan is an enemy, but what I'm saying is there's times where they need to get someplace that's a far distance. They would have to secure land so that they can get all their boats and their ships, their planes and things that can fly from that area to the next area. So this is not a new tactic. This is what everybody does in warfare. They try to get as close to the combative land so that they can get planes over easy and get people back and forth, whatever. So they would use Egypt as a place to help stop different submarines from coming in. So Egypt was an ally. And you want to take that away. In the long run, if the radical government achieves power of the current or variation of the current one, there is likely to be a real freeze in the already cold peace with Israel. The army is trained for clashes with Hezbollah and Hamas. At the most, in combination with Syria, no one has seriously planned for a scenario in which Egyptian divisions enter Sinai, for example. So they're saying here, they have been able to deal with Hamas and Hezbollah by using Egypt as a counter lookout. But now they're going to have to redo how they defend themselves. Even, now they've lost one border. I mean, that someone else was there, because right now they're surrounded basically by all their enemies. If in the end the Egyptian regime falls, one possibility that seems incomprehensible just a few days ago is that the uprising will spread to Jordan and threaten the Hamashites rule. Then Israel, too long peaceful borders, will face an entirely new reality, a new Middle East, but not the one we wish for. So they're saying here, if a new regime takes over, who will they side with now? If they will side with our enemies, basically, we have a problem.
That's right.
We have a problem. The Palestinians, too, likely to reach the conclusion that mass demonstration combined with limited amounts of popular violence will advance their statehood bid without the need for an agreement that would include obligations to Israel. So if they get what they want, their desire, there's a group called the Brotherhood, which is the Muslim Brotherhood. Here we have the Masons, and you know how there they have the Brotherhood, and from what I'm told, they're all around the world. If you are Muslim, they can basically get in to be part of the Brotherhood, and the more secret, the more excellent. So this can be potentially a very grave problem for Israel. Now, I don't know if you can see this or distinguish what we have here. This is a sea of people. I wanted you to see one of the aerial views of the mass. This is not Egypt. Egypt happened or started January 25th. Well, this one is Tunisia, Tunisia, thank you. It's the Tunisian revolt, and it started on January 14th, just a few days before. They were able to oust their president. This is in Africa. They oust their president, and another interim stepped in, but they did it through protest, and now look what's happening. Egypt is following their lead. They're not waiting until voting. What does that bring in? There seems to be a model that is being followed here. So this model that have been established, and it has been established by some other people that are not the people who are in the pictures. It's not those same people. It's some people who have been sitting doing some strategy work, undermining governments. I want to remind you of a scripture that talks about the 10 horns. I didn't put all of that on here because I just wanted to deal with the articles themselves today. But remember the 10 horns, they're jockeying for position, and 4 rise out of those 10. And out of those 4, 1 take out 3 of the others. The little horn, and he becomes the great horn. Could this be what we're seeing now? If we're looking at nations and their regimes taking change right now, there's a good chance we are. Can anyone see this well enough to read through this? This is the Washington Times, and this was reported on the 28th. Anyone?
Egypt. Egypt protests organized by the U.S.
And that is a question mark, because in this article that I was looking at, I guess everyone is trying to be careful of what they say, so it's put as a question. Could this be basically the U.S. in this? So let's take a look.
Tunis, Tunisia. Violent anti-government protests drove Tunisian President Zion Abidine Ben Ali from power Friday after 23 years of iron-fisted rule, as anger over soaring unemployment and corruption spilled into the streets.
The people are hurting. Unemployment is skyrocketing. Jobs, housing, education, everything is being affected. And if you're keeping a listening ear on what's going on here in the United States, we're starting to see the same things in education, unemployment, housing, mortgages, people are foreclosing. It's getting crazy. On the 23rd, I'm sorry, after 23 years, yes, after 23 years, saying that he was another tyrannic ruler who really stayed in power by whatever means. I have no clue, but you read things and people are saying ballot boxes are being shifted and fixed and all the things, we've seen stuff like that. Florida just a few years back when the Bushes was getting into office, there was some allegations that the boxes was fixed in, and you got one brother as the governor, another brother as the president. You just gotta start putting 2 and 2 together, asking questions. All right, here we go. The next and last one.
Protests inspired by the revolt in Tunisia have dominoed along Egypt, Yemen, and Algeria, with citizens calling for governmental change. Webster Tarplay, an investigative journalist, argues the CIA and other intelligence services from the U.S. and other former colonial powers are behind uprisings in Egypt and elsewhere in the Middle East.
So they're coming right out now and saying that, you know what, we know that the CIA is behind certain elements of this, because it's not just one place. It's like targeting different countries in a certain region. And I meant to really bring out the map so you can kind of get a visual and see, very strategic, that these certain countries in a row around certain places are starting to uprise. And that's a warfare tactic. When you get certain, you got to take certain properties so that you can advance. And this seems to be what is happening, that it is, I read a little bit of a book called Economic Hitman. And in this book, this guy, he wrote about how he was one of the economic hitmen for the United States. He would go into a certain country and he would speak to people about, and not just people, these are business people, political heads, whatever. And he would set them up and kind of manipulate situations so that when they, let's say, if a person was the corporate head of an entity of about maybe 1,000 people, you know, he would kind of manipulate them into certain agreements for an ulterior motive. I'll just say it like that. That these things always have ulterior motives. And by the time you know and you look at it, this person had worked his way up through the corporate ladder because he knows these different corporate people, and then now he's in the ear of government, and he's like, okay, you know, the United States, we will back you with, you know, and by the time you know it, there's a collapse happening because there was an infestation that really didn't have true backing. It was all to help you fall, basically. And that's really kind of a rough, you know, of what I'm saying without having all the particulars. But this is what he explained, that he himself, this is what he did. He was an economic hitman. He would go into a not developed country, take their resources that they do have with pledges of backing of a rich country. They would go into an agreement, and this rich country ends up taking up all of what they do have as far as their what is generating resources, and leave them, you know, leave them out there. Okay, I know I'm coming close to the end. I am. Okay, now let's look at where this really is coming from. We cannot put this at all on President Obama's step. It started long before him. Can someone read this first bullet? Posted Monday, July 24th, 2006. He didn't win the presidency until 2008, right? So he wasn't in power yet. So let's kind of go back in time and see what we're dealing with.
Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice revealed far more articulately, if unwittingly, than any other official has in some time, just what is so dangerous about President George W. Bush's foreign policy.
Now this says that Condoleezza Rice let some information out that tells how dangerous President Bush actually is. You know, not really giving all the information, but just saying, hey, we need to really take a look at this. Let's go to the next bullet.
What we are seeing here is, in a sense, the birth pains of a new Middle East. And whatever we do, we have to be certain that we're pushing forward to the new Middle East, not going back to the old Middle East.
Now we have to understand that that word, or that phrase, birth pains, that should start tying some things in for you right away. This is a direct quote from Condoleezza Rice. Birth pains. We are now about to go into a new Middle East. So, could it be that Jordan, Syria, and some of the other places that was called are very strategic lands that they're hitting to cause them to rise up against their government by hitting their unions, motivating people to protest. I mean, all you have to do is start hitting people at work. And when you start hitting people on their jobs, hitting the unions, because see, the unions, they move mass people. And with the help of today, what my findings is, they said that Facebook motivated millions to meet in the square, told them where to be and when to be there.
Wow.
So people are now being able to be motivated not only by their jobs and unions and different places, but you can go direct now. Time. Information has increased. Let's go to the next.
I have no interest in diplomacy for the sake of returning Lebanon and Israel to the status quo, ante, Rice said. And yet sometimes a return to the status quo is the best you can hope for in this region. I could have rushed over and started shuttling, but it wouldn't have been clear what I was shuttling to do. Well, for starters, you could have saved hundreds of lives, preserved billions of dollars in property, and perhaps stemmed the tide of rising anti-Israeli and by extension anti-American passion.
So now what we have is, and these are all quotes from Condoleezza Rice, and she's saying that if you remember, 2006 there was a lot of turmoil over in that region. They were shooting back and forth, and each side was blaming the other. When you see houses bombed and schools being bombed, they put the images on TV and say, look what they're doing. But it's actually going back and forth. You have the U.S. who's saying that they're brokering a peace agreement, and here they are saying, hey, we're just going to let it go. Basically what she's saying. Because it's time for a new Middle East. This is the birthing pangs. Some people are going to die, yes. That's what she's saying. And we could save many lives had we jumped in there, but what would we actually do? What would we really achieve? So if we let this go on, the birth pangs, and after the birth pangs, a new Middle East would happen. So this sounds like it's being fueled by some people at some round tables. Rice, New Middle East comment fueled fury over U.S. policy. Ravish, will you read that one as well?
Since the terrorist attacks of 9/11, Washington has sought to distance itself from authoritarian regimes in the Arab world and promote democratization to counter religious extremism.
So we see 9/11 promoting what? Democracy. So there's an effort to have these nations and these countries fight against each other. And dare I even say, maybe that was even the motivation before 9/11. Remember, no planes could leave off the ground for 45 minutes, and our jets, Air Force, trained to be anywhere in the country within 10 minutes. But 45 minutes they could not get off the ground because they had some things shifting, being the Twin Towers, okay? So that tells me even something more, that there's a motivation that goes back even further than this. And it actually does, but I just wanted to I just wanted to touch bases with current events and let's kind of get a sense of what's going on. What we see is not just now happening. It's been happening. It's been targeted. It's been planned, and things are going according to plan. The last button, bullet, anyone?
But in the brutal invasion of Iraq, freedom has been accompanied by bloody sectarian conflict. Elsewhere in the region, elections have produced gangs for Islamist groups that are anti-American, prompting the U.S. rethink of its strategy.
Okay, I'm going to hit lightly on this, just to give just an idea. You have all kinds of agencies that you can tap into when you want to upset a region. You have political, you have jobs, you have education, you have health, you have everything, all of these things at your disposal. But you also can motivate gangs. If you supply them with ammunition, you give them some drugs to sell, they go out there and sell it, make plenty of money. Then you have turf wars. Money fuels people. And if you pay them, they'll work for you. So this is what we hear in here. And look at the different countries. We got Iraq in there now. And the word freedom. And isn't that the word that we use in this country? We are going into that country and free the people.
They always say that.
There seems to be an underlining strategy here. And I'm coming to a close with this, so I just wanted you to see. Can someone turn off the light? I don't know. I hope the camera will still be able to pick this up well, but we'll do it for a quick second. We'll do it for a second. If you can see this, maybe just go ahead to the right. If you can see this, if the events of the people didn't give you enough to consider the timeline, let's look at this. Shocking mass animal deaths around the world. We got 10,000 tons of, 100 tons of fish died in South America. We got hundreds of snappers, Paris and New Zealand. We have thousands of fish were floating dead in the Philippines. 150 tons of red tilapia dead in Thailand. Scores of dead fish in Haiti. 50 to 100 jackdaws. I don't know what type of fish that is. Dead in Norway. Over 300 domes in Italy. And there's still more that I didn't list. I wanted to give you an example. If you see all of these blue dots, these are the places in the United States. There's more over here. Brazil. We have over in Europe. We have Norway. Italy over there. So if you see all of these blue spots, these are all the different places that animals have been found dead. Fish, birds, seals, crabs, cows. There's all kinds of stuff that I didn't list. A partial list here. And if that didn't convince you that we are in a very particular time, biblical time, February 1st, and I'm very current with this. I'm showing you headline stuff that you would read today. Mount Karishma, a volcano on the southern island of Kyushu, began erupting on January 26th. An eruption on the 1st was 1 of 9 times larger than 1959. The eruption of the volcano, its previous largest, said that the National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology in Japan actually shot out over 1 mile. What you're looking at here, here's below Australia, Asia, coming on over to North America and South America. This is what they call the Ring of Fire. These are volcanic liabilities. All of these small pieces that you see are different places where volcanoes are live. What happens if, let me ask this, if you ever seen a demolition, they go into a building and put dynamite throughout that building. What is the purpose of that?
Bring it down.
To bring it down, right?
Fast.
Exactly, to bring it down fast. Look at that. We're sitting, and California, they have already said a few years ago, if anyone remember, I stated before, that they have announced on television to California, they said, it's not if, it is when. When it blows over here, California will be no more. They're saying that California has, at that moment, that was maybe 5 years ago, they said California may have 30 years, no longer. So they're telling Californians to prepare themselves to get out. And this is the warning to them. But you know, people are not leaving. They're not leaving. But I heard it, I saw it on television, the news, and I also spoke it when we came together, for those who may remember. They are saying, get out of California while you have an opportunity, because California will be no longer. So this mountain volcano happened on February the 1st. Now remember, we've had the 31st. People are also dying. There's a lot of heart attacks going on right now. There's a lot of flu going on. There's a lot of things going on with people. Yahweh is speaking to us, but are we listening? We are in the 6th seal, from what I understand, from my understanding. I don't think we have reached the 7th yet. The 7th is a very special sign that I'm waiting for the 7th. And that is also that's the earthquake, although we've had them. But there's one very particular one that I'm waiting for. And then I will know we have hit the 7th seal. So I'm watching scripturally. That's where I get all my information from. But when I look at the news and they tell me what's going on in the world, it just confirms what the scripture is saying. And I said it last year, I'll say it again this year. Our hiding place is in Leviticus chapter 23. I can love you, you can love me, but the only hiding place we have is in Yeshua, the blood, and he has told us to do what? To eat the bread. And this is a message that I'm trying to get around to people, that we must eat the bread. When do we eat the bread? We start at Passover. The judgment will begin at the house of Yahweh first. That's those who love him. And then it's spreading throughout the nations. What do we have to fear? Really nothing. Because these are the birth pains. After the birth pain comes what? The delivery. And this is what he's saying to us now. That I'm getting ready to take you from those nations. We're getting ready to go home. And I just want you to stay with me. Stay with me. Stay with Yahweh. Let me say it like that. Stay with the scriptures. Stay with his commands.
Yeah.
Because that's where you're going to find me. I'm not moving outside of that. I'm going to do Passover. I'm going to do unleavened bread. I'm going to do all the way to Sukkot. I'm going to do the Sabbath. Because I don't want, when it all comes down, him to say, I don't know you.
Woo.
No, that's right.
Man, oh man.
Because that's where you're supposed to meet him. And until we understand that, we're walking on a dangerous border. Because if the righteous scarcely make it in, what chance do the others have? Questions? Questions? You had a question?